The darkness. What is this darkness? It is exactly the opposite of whatever light is. God is said to be light. And what are the qualities of this light? This light that we know of as God is the personification of all good and positive qualities. God is the personification of love, wisdom, honesty, purity, truth, and all such wonderful positive qualities. Now, darkness is just the opposite of this. There is a spiritual force that is an embodiment of all negative qualities. This force is called darkness because it is exactly the opposite of what God is. In God there is love, and in this darkness there is hatred. In God there is wisdom, in the darkness there is foolishness and stupidity. In God there is honesty, and in the darkness there is hypocrisy. This force of darkness is a bunch of all negative qualities. This is the reason scripture calls it the darkness. It's just the opposite of whatever the light is. Such an ugly, undesirable, and abominable force was every much in existence in the universe without a beginning besides the light. This force, which is rightly called the darkness, was not created by any more. It had always existed. The existence of this darkness was necessary because of the law of relativity. Without this ugly and abominable force, God wouldn't be recognized and glorified as a holy and perfect being before all ages. God, being perfect and holy, would never create such an ugly force. If God created such a negative force, God would be the greatest culprit and criminal of this universe. He would not be worthy of our praises. First Timothy 4 chapter 4th verse tells us everything God created is good. So we can safely conclude that God did not create this negative force. Now we are facing two undeniable facts here. Firstly, we see that a negative force was in existence. It is mentioned in the Bible as having a personality and being the personification of all negative qualities. It is befittingly and rightly called the darkness. Secondly, we see that anything that is essentially bad could never be created by God because God is ultimately good and will produce only good things. So, God cannot be the cause or the creator of anything that is essentially bad. If we want to insist that nothing can exist unless God created it, we would be compelled to conclude that God was the creator of this darkness. Such a conclusion would directly oppose the biblical statement that everything God created is good. We would be contradicting the Holy Bible. If we don't want to accept that there was an uncreated evil force, we will not be able to justify or explain the mention of darkness that couldn't understand and the darkness that had a dwelling place. If we accept the existence of an evil force called darkness and also accept that God would never create such an ugly force, we are left with no other alternative but to accept that an uncreated negative force was very much in existence. This will help us to glorify God before all ages as Jude requires us, and will help us to glorify God as the Holy One before the beginning.